feeling? How we doing? Just gonna double check that y'all can hear me, and once I'm sure of that, then we can hop on in and get started. Yeah, once I know y'all can hear me, we'll be Gucci. La la la. Just double checking. One second, y'all. Testing 1, 2, 3. Am I coming in clear on your end? I hope so. I can hear me, but not great. Can I get a thumbs up in chat? Maybe the music is too loud. Let's turn that back down a little bit. Because I want to make sure that y'all hear me. I'm the thing you need to listen to. Got some water. Reminder, make sure y'all hydrate. Yeah, we are going to, I guess, hope that it's good enough. Because, like, I kind of hear me. I don't understand why it's being weird today. Let's try it one more time. Because I don't know what the fuck's going on. Testing 1, 2, 3. There we go. Okay, I can hear now. Jesus Christ. Shit was wild. Shit was wild. Shit was weird. But it's okay. We figured it out. Okay. Now we can get into the game. For anyone who doesn't know, this is Our Life Beginnings and Always, one of my favorite goddamn games in all of existence. We are currently growing up with our dude Cove Holden. However, right now is not actually about Cove. Fun fact. We are hanging out with Derek Suarez, who is another one of my dudes. Absolutely love him. He's got golden retriever energy. He's a sweetheart. Like, we want to wrap him up and protect him from the world. But yeah, okay, let's hop into Siblings. So just for anyone who doesn't know, our goal will be to get through Siblings today, meaning that Boardwalk will be tomorrow, and then the next day we will go from step 2 to step 3, meaning that theoretically by, what is it, Friday we should be on step 3 and be back with some proper Cove moments. But for now we're here, we're chilling. You stretched your arms high as you stepped into the spot on your wooden floor where the last rays of sunshine landed. The remaining warmth of the day was still enough to tickle your skin. You felt pleasantly full from dinner, and the only thing that was left on your plate was waiting for a knock. Derek closed your door as he came in behind you. You'd gotten to spend the afternoon together, and you knew his mom would arrive to pick him up any minute. And you'd been prepared for Derek's arrival. The first thing you had done when he showed up at your house was put 3 wrinkled dollar bills in his hand. With that, your debt had been paid. Thanks for having me over, Blake. Of course. But I hope you're not bummed that my mom's made Elizabeth do the dishes after you offered to. Derek pressed his palms together, flipping each hand over and under in a loop. It could almost be viewed as a mock washing gesture, but he was probably being awkward. I just thought it'd be fair. I didn't help with the cooking. is sweet, but he's like a little, like he wants to do everything all the time. And like, it's okay to just be chill. He is sweet though. Aw, thanks. Oh, Derek, Mr. Manners. But before you could settle in enough to even take a seat, a pounding set of thuds cracked the laid-back mood. Derek scrunched his limbs totally inward from the shock. You'd been keeping an ear out for that exact sound, but it was completely unnecessary. Tourists halfway across town wouldn't miss that blare. The racket was followed by the door Derek had so carefully closed moments ago, roughly swinging open. Obviously, the person on the other end wasn't Mrs. Suarez. It was your older sister. With a huff and an eye roll, she delivered a brief message as fast as she could spit it out. Derek's mom is here, and our mom made me come get you about it. Jesus, Elizabeth, that was... I guess thanks for telling us. She gave you another roll of her eyes, but didn't waste a single extra word on you. In one motion, she curled her fingers over the edge of the door, twisted around, and yanked the door shut. The books and boxes on your desk shelves shook. Derek's teeth clattered too. He whispered through a grimace. Man. I'm sorry about that. No worries, it's not your fault. She gets extra grouchy sometimes, right now for example. Derek's shoulders slowly eased down into their resting position, but his expression was pinched. He began to whisper while glancing the way your sister went. Too cold. His voice was hushed, secretive, almost afraid Elizabeth might slap the door open again and find out he was talking about her. Do you think it's about the dishes, or... I don't know. You could only give a half-hearted answer. You struggled to understand why Elizabeth acted out the way she did a lot of the time. But your mom is waiting. We've got to go so you can get home. Right. Blake? Derek's mouth opened and closed without saying anything else. He lifted a hand to try gesturing, but dropped that without it going anywhere. It made you raise your eyebrow. Yeah? His bright green eyes squinted hard into narrow slits, but you could still see the way they darted around. His gaze was trained on the ground, scanning across the floorboards, though everything that really mattered was probably inside his actual head. I was wondering. He paused again. Derek's hands balled into tight fists. He let out a breath and finally asked a question. Are you busy tomorrow? You blinked. That was all? No. The simple answer still made Derek flinch. It might not be all. Really? Really? Then... He spread his fingers and arms out in a not quite a shrug. Would you want to come over to my house for the day? The tone of voice and pose he took was casual in a scripted way. He definitely wanted you to feel like it was totally optional and no problem if you turned him down. You couldn't tell if that was the end or just another point in a process, but you were going along for the ride. I can probably do that. I'd have to ask my moms. Derek leaned in closer, slowly opening his eyes wider. Some kind of suspense was growing. All right. He dipped his head in tiny repetitive nods. The look on his face went distant again, the way it did when he was thinking deeply. Then, finally, he flung his hands up to complete the shrug and spoke the question he'd been stalling on. Would you want to come over tonight instead and sleep over? We could, like, camp out in my living room. It'd be fun, our own little party. I mean, sure. Now the nervousness made sense. I know that's pretty out of nowhere. If you can't make it or don't wanna or anything, I'm totally cool with it. I want to. Hopefully moms will let me. That's gonna be mine. Awesome. Come on, we'll ask right now. Yeah, definitely. My mom is waiting for us. The two of you left your bedroom and bounded down the stairs one after the other. Your warm greeting came as you hit the landing point on the first floor. Hello, Derek and Blake. Your two moms and Derek's one mom were gathered in the entryway of the living room. Derek reached a hand out towards her and waved it. Hey, Mom. Hi, it's nice to see you, Mrs. Suarez. After smiling at him and at you, Derek's mom turned her head over her shoulder to speak to your parents. His mom is so pretty. I love her. Her dress, like, I love his family. I love all the moms, honestly. Thank you again for taking care of him. Mom? Derek uncharacteristically broke polite decorum by interrupting his mom. It got her attention and she let him speak. I had something I wanted to ask you. You and Mrs. and Mrs. Thrasher. Oh? What is it, sweetie? Like, look at my moms. I love them. They're so sweet. I love that Ma has a little fucking nose piercing. Like, they're all so adorable. I love them. He had the attention and encouragement of all three mothers. On this stage, Derek didn't beat around the bush the way he did before. I was wondering if Blake could come with us and spend the night at my house, please? He knew your moms well enough to foresee potential concerned reactions, and so Derek sped through his extra terms to make sure they heard that part before answering. We'd set up in the living room instead of my room, and my parents and brothers would still be around. People could keep an eye on us. As expected, Mom and Ma weren't instantly thrilled. They were shocked by the possibility. And while he was successful in avoiding the first obvious pitfall, your mom still had a completely different apprehension to fret about. That's pretty last minute. You're about to walk out the door. We couldn't have Blake impose. Derek's mom stayed strangely silent after he popped the question. She fixed a stare at her son, crossing her arms against her chest, and shook her head at him. But the shake didn't mean no. It had another meaning that maybe only a Suarez could get. Still, she smiled. We can find a place for Blake tonight, if there's no family conflict with that and they would like to come over, of course. Both of your moms turned their faces right towards one another on instinct. They were astounded that Derek's mom didn't mind. Yeah, I gotta be honest, my character's moms seem a lot more, like, not strict, but they're very, like, this all needs to be planned out in advance, versus, I feel like Derek's mom is a lot more relaxed, but not, like, too much. I would argue, I think Ko's mom goes a little bit too into the impulsive territory, but they're all sweet. They're all still good parents. They're just different parents. Huh. Mom scratched her head over it. Derek had made a huge request with no advanced warning, and Mrs. Suarez had 3 children to care for already. It seemed unreasonable to her. For your ma, however, a light began to sparkle in her eyes, and when she noticed you looking, she held your gaze. Blake, do you want to go? I do. Ma wrapped both her arms around one of her wife's. I see. I think that would be all right just this time. Really? Yeah, and then in this house, like Ma is the more laid back one, and Mom's the one that's a little bit more strict about stuff. But it's interesting watching the family dynamics, honestly. Your mom sputtered. She clearly hadn't gotten to that page of the script. Mom got an encouraging pat on the top of her hand for her troubles. She remained absolutely perplexed, mouth open, eyes wide. Mom could only process enough to realize that she'd become the odd mom out. She probably didn't know exactly why she was doing it, but Mom turned to look at you. Pack it up, Blake. You wouldn't want to keep them waiting. You snapped your gaze to Derek. He'd done the same. The two of you shared a matching look of astoundment. They are so sweet. I love them. And can I just say, like, all of the parents, like, all of the couples are so in love. So, like, Mr. and Mrs. Suarez, completely cute together. Ma and Mom, completely cute together. Just 10 out of fucking 10. I know Cove's parents aren't together. That's why I had to fix my verbiage. It was almost identical to the gesture your moms had made when Mrs. Suarez first accepted Derek's proposition. Thank you, Mrs. and Mrs. Thrasher. Thanks, Moms! The deal was finalized with a crisp clap from Mrs. Suarez. Pamela's right. You should get what you'll need for the night. You're coming along for the ride. I'll help! Neither of you gave them time to change their minds. You ran back to your room and began to pack in a whirlwind. As you shoved clothes into a backpack, Derek hovered in the center of the room. He fidgeted with his energy that was going unused. Can you get me a spare toothbrush? There's extra for traveling in the hall closet. Gotcha. He was gone in a flash. Probably just the basics, I would think, for just one night gone. Yeah, we only need the basics. You made a note in your head to ask your moms to tell Cove where you'd be, since there wasn't time to explain it in person. But then you remembered a conversation you had with him that morning. He had plans the next day and wouldn't be around for a lot of it anyway. Derek's invite had come at a convenient time. Derek returned in a sprint, a toothbrush held over his head in triumph. With a grin, you threw it into the overnight bag. That was enough for you to get you by for a short trip. You zipped it up, hooked it around your shoulder, and went out the door. You'd checked off the final requirements to leave. For the second time in a matter of minutes, you rushed down your stairs in a flurry of steps with Derek close enough that you almost stumbled into him. At the bottom, you came to stand in front of the mom group. We're ready. Perfect. Good luck, kiddos. Have a great time. Gently and rhythmically, Ma ran her hand over your hair. All her precious hopes for your safety and happiness ebbed from her fingertips into you. Good night, Blake. Take care. I will, and thanks. Mrs. Suarez and Derek gave their own goodbyes, and afterwards they returned to the minivan that had brought them here. And then, almost unbelievably, you slid into the vehicle with them to go on this impromptu sleepover. The chill of the squeaky leather against your hands and the persistent smell of animal cracker crumbs kept you grounded in reality. Derek bounced against the seat back like a kid on a roller coaster and clicked his belt into place for the ride back to his condo. You strapped in too. You never could have imagined the evening taking you down this literal and metaphorical road, but you were eager to find out what happened next. The sun continued to sink as Derek's mom drove down the highway. When you arrived at your destination, so had night. The condo complex was nicely lit and well maintained. The three of you easily made your way to Derek's house and went right in. Slipping her set of jingling keys onto a nearby wall hook, Mrs. Suarez called out into the hall from the empty living room. "We're home!" You braced your ears for the second sibling-caused commotion of the evening that you knew would come. "Derek's back!" Nicholas tore out of his bedroom and thundered across the floor until he had his arms gripped around his big brother's legs. Even with all the force 6-year-old Nicholas could muster, it was hardly a bump against Derek. He absorbed the impact calmly, giving his little sibling a pat on the head for his troubles. "Yeah, we're back." The two remaining boys of the family came from the same room at a snail's pace in comparison to the firsts, but soon enough Mr. Suarez and Jorge were with you too. "Welcome home." Jorge rubbed a growing sleepiness from one eye. He took in the scene with undisguised confusion. "Why is Blake here?" Hi, I've come to visit." I think I'm just, fairly direct about most things. "What? Mom?" She answered matter-of-factly. "Blake is staying over with us tonight." Look at this family. They're such a cute bunch. I love them." Jorge clamped his mouth shut. He might have had something to say about the spur-of-the-moment plans, but was obedient enough to not argue with his mother. Mr. Suarez, however, had a childlike glee in his expression. "Oh, very good. His family's just so welcoming. They're so sweet. I love them." Derek cut into his dad's excitement with a reply a little too soon. He had completely normal words to say, but had been put on fast forward. "Yeah, it's great. Thanks, Dad. Anyway, we're gonna camp out in the living room. Can we borrow the tent?" Derek's hands were balled into fists and held up near his collarbone overzealously, kind of protectively. His dad looked down at him with a familiar serene expression. You knew exactly where you'd seen it before when Mr. Suarez placed his hand on the top of Derek's head. He took care of Derek the same way Derek cared for Nicholas. Of course. And the gesture worked the exact same charm on Derek. His shoulders relaxed, his expression softened shyly, the pounding nerves that had been building faded. "Camping?" Nicholas shouted without warning. The entire exchange had held no interest for the youngest one until that moment. "That's right, Nico." Derek reached down and carefully placed his hands on Nicholas's shoulders to nudge him off. Nicholas went willingly, giddily repeating the same word, this time in amazed confirmation rather than as a question. "Camping!" With a thumbs up, Derek stood tall. The plan was in motion. "Blake, you can put your bag down and sit if you want to. I'll go grab some other stuff." When moving past you, Derek took a second to lean in and whisper a light-hearted reassurance. "The little bros will go to bed before we do, and Mom is going to be watching them tomorrow. You're not here to babysit the whole time again." "Okay, cool." The whole group broke off into 3 sets. Derek ran to his room with Nicholas right on his heels, while Mr. and Mrs. Suarez left the space to the kids, returning to their own bedroom. You and Jorge stayed where you were. Jorge shuffled over to the kitchen counter to sit on a bar stool. He wasn't helping, but he wasn't getting in the way. Jorge was more sensitive than he let on, so you made sure to smile reassuringly over at him so he knew he was wanted there. His lips quirked up just a little in response. Then you took your own seat on the couch and got unpacking. You kept busy sorting through it all until Derek returned with the goods. 2 pillows were under each of his arms. He had a few brightly patterned blankets draped over his shoulders, and a rope loop of a big nylon pack was hooked around one wrist. Nicholas supported the effort by carrying one long pillow. He clutched it tight to his chest as best he could, considering the pillow was about as long as his whole torso. Derek piled up the supplies on the opposite side of the couch from where you were. Nicholas opened his arms wide to let his pillow drop to the floor in a soft puff. It made Derek chuckle proudly. I'm gonna put together the tent. Nicholas, Jorge, do you want to help? I'll help. I'm gonna put together the tent. Nicholas bounced around Derek in absolute eagerness. In the distance, Jorge pushed away from the counter. Yeah. His expression was flat and wide-eyed, but there was a hopeful rise in his voice as he got up from the bar stool. I'm helping too. Let's do it. The declaration made you, Derek, Nicholas, and Jorge get to work making heads and tails of the tent. Derek yanked open a cinched-in top of the pack while he walked to the furthest spot in the living room. Everyone followed his lead. He pushed the semicircle basket chair up against the edge of the counter wall so the tent could go there instead. Derek dumped the contents of the bag onto the cream rug. He leaned over on one foot while kicking the other in the air to reach over and grab the instructions that fell out with the rest of the materials. He scanned over the steps briefly, but it was only a refresher. Derek was able to get right into the process. Nicholas was assigned pole control. He kept watch on the pile, not letting any roll away, and would pass the tent legs over when they were needed. Stretching the fabric out took the rest of you. You, Jorge, and Derek each grabbed a side and tugged. Derek had to squeeze himself against the tall potted plant in the corner. He snickered at the way the leaves curled around his face. Despite that, you got the tent laid out across the ground. The first time Nicholas got to pass a pole. It slapped against the wall in the tiny space you were working in. Jorge covered his ears and ducked. Derek snatched the end out of the air before it could do more damage. The little boy promised to be more careful. He got to keep his job and took it seriously. Piece by piece, the project slowly took shape until it was finally complete. The small, light gray tent sat in its full form nestled in the nook of the living room. All right, good job, everybody. As if he'd yelled into a cave, an echo of his words followed after. Good job! Nicholas threw his hands in the air with joy. Jorge simply smiled, satisfied. Thanks for the help, everyone. I'm also going to take a sip of water because reading makes me thirsty. Beautiful, fantastic, 10 out of 10, love it. Okay. Derek stuck his fists to his hips and gave the team an encouraging grin. Now we can actually do the indoor camping part of this living room campout. Derek strolled to the cabinet in the corner. He pulled open the translucent doors to fiddle around with something inside. A poppy tune blared out. He turned on a CD player. Nicholas leapt onto the couch and swung his arms in the air to dance. Jorge swayed his shoulders to bubblegum notes. Their big brother wasn't done yet. He made a beeline for the kitchen cupboard next. This time, the mood setter Derek retrieved was a pillow-sized bag of puffy marshmallows. Catch! That was the only warning before he sent marshmallows sailing across the room in a perfect arc. Jorge managed to snatch it from the air without a problem. The top of the bag was twisted around and sealed with a blue clip. The opening side was stretched from the process of twisting and untwisting repeatedly. It had been well appreciated so far. Jorge undid the clip and set it to the side of the on the coffee table. His tongue pressed against the corner of his lips as he dug his hand deep into the bag for just the right one. Nicholas tilted over from the cushion and into the bag to fill his tiny fist with 2 marshmallows. He crushed them between his fingers, the fluffy confection squeezing through the cracks. It really was a party. Derek put his hand on the cupboard handle and shouted to you over the music. Do you like marshmallows? What kind of person doesn't like marshmallows? Timeout. It says, what now? I changed it. Thank you for pointing out, friend. I did it and I saved it. I don't know why it's not. So this one will just be mismarked, but y'all know I'm playing Our Life. I don't know why when I went through and I changed it, because I did it before stream. I went through, I saved it, it said it was good on my end, so there's no reason that it should be saying that shit. So that just means this one will be improperly fucking labeled, I guess. Because, you know, why do I try and do anything? That's stupid. Yeah, so whatever, this one will be mislabeled. If people look at the game and think I'm playing Spider-Man, then they can get a fucking clue, I guess. But yeah, whatever. Twitch is dumb. We know Twitch is dumb. I'm gonna keep fucking going because I'm not doing a reset after 36 minutes. I changed it. This is on Twitch. Twitch, moving the fuck on. What kind of lunatic doesn't like marshmallows? Not the ew. Who the fuck says that they didn't? Yeah, no, I see it. I did look. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I would just like to move on and not talk about it anymore. That's all. That's it. Like, I just want to move on. There's nothing I can do about it midstream. Nothing I can do about it midstream. Fun fact. Because even if I change it on my end, it's still gonna say Spider-Man on your end. Unless I end the stream and do the whole fucking thing over again. So I'm leaving it. Not bad. Pluck one out of the bag and eat it as your answer. The cupboard door swung closed and nothing was there to obstruct your view of the bright grin on his face anymore. He finally joined the rest at base camp, which was the couch at the moment. Jorge, get me one of those too. Without even one warning, Jorge simply flicked a marshmallow at his brother. And same as before, Derek grabbed it in midair. He bit one piece out of the top edge, chewing thoughtfully. There's no TV while camping, so having a sleepover movie wouldn't make sense. With the swallow of the marshmallow and snap of his fingers, Derek empathetically declared a grand idea. We'll play an ad-lib game. I'll make up a story, and the 3 of you can fill in some blanks to make it complete. Jorge rolled a shoulder passively. He had finished his first treat and was poking around for another perfect selection. Okay. Nicholas smiled a big white smile, but it wasn't just pearly teeth. His entire mouth was full of marshmallow mush. You took that reaction as a yes. The little ones were on board. I'm up for that. Alright, let me think. We need a noun, a thing you can drive or ride on, a shape, a color, a food, and a drink. Nicholas gulped painfully, forcing down way too much marshmallow goop all at once, but he wouldn't let anyone beat him to the punch. A truck! A truck! Nicholas's eyes were wide. He was practically vibrating from the sugar high mixed with the chance to add a truck to the story. Derek rubbed his back placently. Time out. Does it sound weird to y'all, or is that me? Hold on 1 second. I'll be right back.
Back in?
Hello, I am back. Sorry, technical difficulties. Where were we? Yes, this story time. That's the ride, Jorge. The middle child plucked at the frayed plastic edge of the marshmallow bag. It might have taken him longer to come up with something than the youngest, but he did contribute an idea. Blue. Cool, we've got a color. Blake? What do I want to pick? I want to pick the drink. Oh, type in a drink? I have to actually, type it in? What drink do we want, y'all? I don't fucking know. Oh, I could do my Skittle soda. You know what? We're gonna do... I feel like the kids would appreciate chocolate milk. I can't type that, that's too much. Let's do... You wanna do Baja Blast? Let's see if we can. Beautiful, Baja Blast fits. There we go. Gotcha. He shifted his focus back to the boys. Derek's expression and the entire way he carried himself was different when speaking to them. It reminded you of a teacher interacting with his students. It's fine. I spelt it wrong because you spelt it wrong, so it's okay. We knew what we meant. If I really wanted to, I could go back and fix it, but I think it's funnier just to leave it as Baja Blast. It's fine. Jorge, Nicholas, give me some more words. Orange. Nicholas, I picked the color. His words were both a low mumble and a higher pitched whine. That was paired with a crinkling noise coming from the marshmallow bag Jorge had started twisting in his hands. Derek swooped in to defuse the situation. He put his arms between the two brothers, physically keeping things separated. "Don't worry, that's not the color, it's the food." Jorge huffed. Nicholas grinned single-mindedly at his big brother, oblivious to the trouble he almost caused. "That's another thing done. We need something else now." "Hexagon." "Oh, good one. That's a shape." Derek continued to warmly watch over his little siblings, but the words he spoke were for you. "Blake, you're giving us the last one, a noun." "Yeah, the noun should be..." "Oh, I get to type in the noun? Okay, what noun do we want? It should be something fun." "I know what we're doing." "Ferret's a noun." "Booyah, there we go, buddies." His expression somehow softened even more. "Awesome." Derek pulled his chest back and folded his arms. He smirked, brows angled and eyes squinted. "I can now tell you the story of Baby Castle." Nicholas stamped his feet rapidly into the couch. He was absolutely squealing from the premise alone. "Baby Castle?" "Yes, that's right. It's a big open field where the stone fortress that was in a big open field there was a stone fortress that was Baby Castle. Everyone who lived there was a little baby, but they didn't need any adults. Their greatest treasure was a giant golden ferret at the center of the courtyard. They were always vigilant to protect it from the greedy hands of grown-ups." Jorge snorted. His mouth and cheeks began to pull upwards. Then one day someone came to the gates of the hexagon on their truck. The gates of the castle on their truck. It was a man, not a baby or even a kid. He had a hexagon-shaped head and a fancy top hat. He was knocking on the door, demanding to be let in. They were just babies and they needed supervision. It was a blue alert and the guards were rushing to their stations. The first line of defense was their orange catapult. Oh no! It was loaded up and then fired. Bullseye! The orange knocked the top hat off his head, but the hexagon-faced man wasn't deterred. He used his giant grown-up legs to climb over the wall. There was a panic in the castle. He had to be after their golden ferret. Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot with precision. His hands had gone up in front of him with his palms facing forward. He looked like a goalie of a soccer game. But the babies weren't beaten yet. The squirt gun battalion lined up, and as soon as the adult stepped foot on the other side, he was pelted with Baja Blast. He stumbled back, and the gatekeepers opened up the door while he was blinded. He got pushed right out and back onto his truck. The guards gave one more shove, and the man with his truck, and without his hat, slid down the hill and far away. The castle was saved! The babies and their ferret were still free. Hooray! The end! A matching pair of cheers filled the air. Nicholas and Jorge were thrilled by the yarn Derek had spun for them. Applauded the grand conclusion of the tale of Baby Castle too. Bravo! The living room campsite blowout kept rolling from there. Derek turned the music up louder, making sure to skip any track that didn't fit the mood. Jorge and Nicholas swung across the floor to dance. They threw marshmallows in the air and tried catching them with their mouths, and when that one And when that got old, they tried to see who could fit the most in their mouth at one time. Not the Chubby Bunny Challenge. Derek grooved to the beat and tapped his toes around as he collected the treats they missed, picked up the pillows they knocked to the floor, and patted backs when their stuffed faces made them cough. But he wasn't only Mr. Responsible. Derek took his own shot at the marshmallow mouthful competition and blew his little brothers out of the water. New challenger in the marshmallow game. I feel like it would probably be a tie between me and Derek. The stuff would have started coming out of your nose if you tried to get any more in. Oh no. As the night continued, Derek moved on from the party hotspot to chill out inside the tent. He was on his side, propped up by his elbow. It took a few minutes for Nicholas to notice his brother's disappearance from his sight lines. You knew the moment it happened. He'd been bounding from cushion to cushion on the couch, but came to a firm stop, sticking his feet deep in place. A helpless pout flickered on Nicholas's face before it almost instantly curved into a sly grin. Nicholas knew where he could find his favorite person. He leapt from the arm of the couch to land at the entrance of the tent. From there, he sprung forward like a shot straight into Derek, shoving him over onto his back with an oof. Derek didn't get up. He flopped his arms out and laid motionless. 3, 2, 1. Derek was down for the count. Nicholas was the winner. Claiming his victory, Nicholas curled up on Derek's flattened chest. He tuckered himself out. Sat stretched out on the blanket inside the tent. Jorge wandered over to sit down cross-legged. He had one shoulder in the tent and the rest of him was out. Derek's eyes drooped closed, and he heaved a satisfied sigh. I'm too old to keep up with you, bros. You can party way harder than me. He could still muster enough energy to move a hand over his brother's fluffy, marshmallow-speckled hair. The little boy snuggled his cheek into Derek's jersey even more. Still cross-legged, Jorge took hold of his ankles and rocked himself gently back and forward. The childlike position conflicted how contemplative his next words were. I wonder what things will be like when we really are older. The brother with the most days behind him smiled softly while his eyes remained shut. That's easy. 10 years from now, I'm gonna be a famous athlete. Nicholas will obviously be the cheer captain at all my games. Derek earned a squealing giggle from Nicholas. He even kicked a leg out like a puppy who got a tummy scratch. Jorge, you'll be my career manager. Jorge stopped his movement, sitting a little taller. A smile pulled at the edges of his mouth. Blake will be there too. That perked your own interest. Not the trophy spouse. What would I be doing? You'd be achieving your dreams. Then his voice drifted off quietly. And the four of us would all be neighbors. Your heart skipped a beat. He wanted to live next to you. He wanted you to be a part of his future. Derek, Jorge, and Nicholas. You glanced at each of their faces and felt glad you got to be there. To be here. You went to different schools, lived in different towns, had different families, but sometimes you were able to share your worlds with each other. And maybe someday Derek's story would come true and you'd be even closer. But that time wasn't now and all too soon. The Suarez parents reappeared to take their younger children off to bed in their own room. Despite nearly being asleep already, Nicholas grasped Derek's shirt when his dad reached in to pick him up. Derek kept one hand on Nicholas's head and pressed the other against the floor, slowly shifting into a sitting position. Nicholas's vice-like grip made it easy to do without either of them falling over. When he was upright, Derek collected his little brother in his arms fully and shuffled out of the tent. "This is pretty cool, huh, Nico? Usually I'm all the way in my room, but tomorrow all you'll have to do is open the door, look down the hall, and I'll be there." Derek whispered soothingly on the path to the back bedroom, putting to bed not just the delicate bundle he carried, but also the likely resistance the boy would have put up. Jorge trailed behind his other brothers. He didn't need the extra help, but Derek stood in place. He didn't move until the middle one could come up by his side. All together, the three Suarez sons went through the door. You waited in the living room quietly. Maybe a minute or two passed before Derek switched off with his parents. He came out empty-handed, and they went in. "Hi, Sammy, how are you?" He took wide, tiptoeing steps over to the campsite. His sleepiness from before was wiped away by a second wind of excitement. Derek made it back to the tent and put a hand to his mouth, watching the hall like a hawk for any sign of his family. "We've got to change into our pajamas, but we don't have to go to sleep for real." You got to your feet, his eagerness rubbing off on you. The both of you quietly bustled between the bathroom and living room, finishing all last-minute prep. Derek's parents lingered at the edge of the hallway until both you and Derek were completely set. PJs on, teeth brushed, the works. "Doing good? Just came to check out what you're doing?" "Yeah, I'm playing like my favorite game ever. It's the sweetest goddamn visual novel. Genuinely, I love it. Plus, it's super inclusive. Like all the stuff you get to do with your character creation is so sweet. You can change pronouns as they grow up. Like it's 10 out of 10. Love this goddamn game." "Good night, Derek and Blake. As I have a stroke. Fuck. Sleep well. Enjoy the great outdoors of the living room." "Night, Mom. Night, Dad." Good night." Mr. Suarez hit the light. The condo blinked into darkness. There were footsteps, silence, and the click of a door opening and shutting. His parents had returned to their own bedroom, this time to turn in for the rest of the night. With the opening and intermission over, part 2 of the Derek and Blake at-home adventure out could begin. Derek went from sitting up perfectly straight, ready for some non-existent interview, to dropping forward onto his stomach. He squirmed around using his elbows. The effort fluttered the tent and blankets, making a soft crinkling sound. When he had positioned himself facing you, Derek rested his head against the top of one fist. He grinned keenly. The rest of his family might have been right across the condo, but this was still the first chance to talk just between yourselves since the sleepover started. He'd been waiting for it. "Hey, Blake." His cheeks lifted high enough to push up the bottom of his eyes as he whispered with a childlike sense of secret sharing. "I was wondering, if we were being completely serious, what would you want to do in the future? Do you have, I don't know, a goal? Or a dream?" Let's see. At 13, I don't know what all I was thinking about. Yeah, I think I had some type of goal. Yeah, I do. Hopefully I'll be able to create things. I bet it'd be amazing. I really want to actually feel like I'm a responsible adult. Fucking mood. I still feel that one. Oh, that's a good one. Want to learn a lot. Knowledge is power. And traveling would be cool in theory, not being a broke bitch. Awesome. And I'd like to help people. You're so nice. I love Derek. He's such a sweet boy. Yeah, that kind of thing. I'm not too worried about being like very skilled. Just want to create things, travel, be a responsible adult, help people, and that sort of thing. Cool. Thanks for telling me. Derek contemplatively rolled over on his back. The arm that had held his chin up was now tucked under his head for support there instead. His eyes never broke away from yours, despite flipping upside down. He could move as freely as he wanted and was taking full advantage of that. When his siblings were around, he had to work with 8 limbs and 2 heads thanks to Nicholas's literal attachment to him. Thank you, Sammy. I appreciate you. And that got your train of thought fully on the track of siblings. You'd opened your mouth and said, Not I wonder what it'd be like to be an only child. I am an only child in real life, so instead I'm gonna say siblings are complicated. Because they are. Like, I might not have any, but from all my friends and stuff that I've witnessed, it seems like having a sibling is really fucking complicated. Derek made a valiant attempt to nod along from his lopsided position. Agreed. Do you ever wish you had a big sibling? His gaze trailed away from yours for the first time so he could stare at the tent ceiling. I don't think so. Maybe I've never needed a big sibling to look up to because I already had someone for that. My dad. Oh, that makes sense. The air in the near complete darkness had felt warm and comfortable, but the atmosphere began to change. It was too subtle to say exactly why, but enough for you to notice. Blake? Derek reversed his position again, getting on his stomach. His arms were crossed over the floor in front of him, and he rested his cheek down against them. Derek's eyes were on the ground, too. Would it be weird to ask if you're having fun? I love him. This poor sweet bean just wants to make sure we're having a good time. He's such a good little host. Having a sibling is hectic for sure. Yeah, that's what it seems like to me. Like, technically I have an older half-sister, but I was raised as an only child. We never, like, lived in the same house. No, it wouldn't be weird. Are you having fun, dude? You're always worried about everybody else. Are you enjoying yourself? What about Derek? Yeah, definitely. He clicked his heels together in a rhythm. Soft taps and rustling of the blanket. 1, then 2, and 3, 4 in quick succession, and it repeated again. Derek mumbled into his forearm. I was just really hoping this would be a nice time. The pensive look on his face, the tension in his tone, and your heart pounding harder. Everything felt very serious. It's nothing. The squeezing pain in your chest eased, though somehow it was more of a disappointment than a relief. But Derek sprang up on his palms, bringing his head up to your level and beaming directly at you. Have you watched anything cool recently? Jorge and I have been showing Nicholas a lot of great stuff he couldn't see before because he was too little when they came out. He'd kicked the ball in a new direction and had too high of a defense for you to maneuver it back. But that was all right. You could talk to Derek about anything. You and Derek continued to bounce from topic to topic. You quietly spoke your thoughts out into the air while hidden away from the rest of the world in your camp. It went on through the night until, before you realized it, your eyes were opening to the morning sunlight. Oh, it's bright. Can I just take a moment to say, I love their house. Like, their little condo is so cute. Like, I'm obsessed. I like this picture over here. I don't know, like the pictures on the walls. I think that might be like a flower over there. It's just all very, very cute. It's very, very cute. I love looking at the art in this fucking game because it's just the art style. 10 out of fucking 10. They did so good. But there was no peace in Derek's household. It's morning! After giving his war cry, Nicholas barreled from his room and catapulted himself into the tent. Derek wrestled with Nicholas on the blankets in a tickle fight. It was a memorable way to begin the day. For breakfast, there was a cupboard full of different cereals and instant oatmeal packets to choose from, plus fruits, berries, and nuts to top it with if you wanted. Each bowl was prepared to its owner's specifications, either by themselves or by Mrs. Suarez for those too little to reach everything. You got, ooh, what do I want? Gotta go. You know what? I'm not really like an oatmeal person. Maybe I need to give oatmeal another go at some point, but it's like a texture thing for me. It's too mushy. It's too mushy. I gotta go with the fruity cereal. Be so for real. I'm fruity. I want the fruity cereal. Gimme. And I don't think I'm gonna add anything to my fruity cereal. Not fruity cereal and peanut butter. Oh no. Nope. That was all you got. Derek chuckled, blowing on the steam of his freshly cooked oatmeal. Glad someone's using that. You checked, and he was right. Every Suarez had chosen oatmeal that morning. Stirring her own hot bowl of oats, Mrs. Suarez joined the conversation. Dad eats it, and Derek's mom leaned over to the edge of the marble counter so she could whisper to you. So does Nico, as a snack when Derek isn't home. Oh. You glanced down the hallway, expecting Derek's dad to come join the family soon. But Mrs. Suarez let you know how Mr. Suarez very sneakily went past you a couple hours ago when you were sleeping. Derek swallowed a spoonful of peach oatmeal with blueberries to note how his dad had to commute. Derek's mom nodded before moving the conversation forward. I'll take you home in the evening. The younger ones can stay with Mr. Suarez then. You'll have a peaceful ride. Your moms know it'll be a little late. We worked it out yesterday while you were packing. And I'll be out running errands until then. I will be bringing the kids. You two can enjoy your time however you choose. Is that fine? Derek stuck his spoon towards the ceiling and gave you a thumbs up from his bar stool. Yeah, that sounds good. Derek put his other fist on the counter. Double thumbs up. Soon you learned another new thing about Derek's family. His dad commuted very early, and all hands were tasked with cleaning up whether they were guests or not. The 5 of you made quick work of breakfast. Then Mrs. Suarez, with some more assistance from Derek, corralled Jorge and Nicholas into the minivan to act as helpers during her daily tasks. Jorge could properly fulfill that role, while Nicholas was more of an honorary helper who still needed more support than he gave. The title was still exciting enough for him to release Derek for 1 minute so he could be strapped into his car seat for the drive. From one job to another, you and Derek were left alone to put the living room back into its proper order. First, your belongings were collected and put aside to make sure nothing got mixed in with the other supplies. The blankets were stuffed back into Derek's room and the spare closet, and any loose marshmallows that were discovered to have escaped being devoured and ended up on the floor were thrown in the trash. Your campsite became a hollow shell of what it once was. It had ended so quickly, but a short adventure in the great outdoors of the Suarez living room was better than none. It was still a minor miracle that you got to come. You didn't forget that. Lastly, the two of you worked as a team to break down the tent itself. You slipped out each of the poles, retracting them to their smaller size, and began to get them packed away into the sturdy bag they came from the night before. While folding up one of the legs, Derek lightheartedly chatted with you. I'm so excited. The whole day. We can do anything before you've got to go. Walk to the park, watch a movie, get food somewhere. If you were being entirely honest with yourself, the things he was suggesting and the way he said it almost made you think it was a date. But Derek certainly didn't claim it was. He hummed along with a bounce in his pose. He was having plenty of fun just doing regular chores with you. The good mood was infectious. It's great. I was just thinking about how I was surprised my mom's let me come today. Out of nowhere, Derek twitched like he was hit by a bolt. His hands flipped over protectively, and the pole fumbled out of his grasp. It clattered against the wooden floor. The sharp sound made Derek wince. He gave a meek apology while the leg rolled back against his sneaker just as pitifully. Sorry. Derek bent his knees and gripped at his shirt's edge on the way down before he reached out to pick up what he'd dropped. What were you saying? That was pretty off. You didn't miss the blaring sign complete with warning sounds that something was up, but he obviously wasn't comfortable, so you tried to let it go. I was just talking about my mom's. Usually, they're really strict about sleepovers. I can't do it out of nowhere. It's a planned thing. Having it be a campout in the living room must have helped a lot. You gave a bit of a shrug and scanned around for another piece to put away. We got lucky. Oh yeah, that makes sense. They are like that. Derek fiddled uselessly with the dark gray rubber foot at the end of the pole. He was pretending to keep busy. You wondered if he remembered what the two of you were supposed to be busy with. It wasn't going away whether you ignored it or not. Did you think they didn't like you, or that I meant something else? No, forget it. It's dumb and doesn't matter. He threw the words at you. It was final and way harsher than you expected from Derek. The sharp edge of it wasn't for you. That part was directed towards himself. You'd never slept over at his house before. That'd been your guess for why it might have been a little awkward. There was clearly more to it. You frowned. It's not dumb, I'm sure of it. His brows angled at the same time. A tight bend formed in the tent leg. The way he twisted it between his hands was too much for the thin piece of pole. He didn't say a word. You can always talk to me about things. He sealed his eyes tight and dropped the leg on purpose this time. Despite all the effort it took him to ask you to come in the first place, that paled in comparison to this. Suddenly, it seemed like he wished you were anywhere but right there. I can't tell you. Derek's voice wasn't an imponent whisper. You'll think I'm the most annoying guy in the world. I am the most annoying guy in the world. It was such a bad idea. It was sneaky and judgy. I shouldn't have bugged you, but I already did. It's too late. Derek's posture pulled closer and closer together as he spoke. His fists tapped against the front of his chest and his knees bent inward. The pressure building inside was exerting real force on him. What if you don't want to be friends anymore? The last part almost disappeared before you'd had a chance to hear it. He looked small and lost. I'll always be your friend. The tension kept compounding, causing cracks where more words could slip through. I had a reason why I invited you when I did, why it needed to be now. Yes. Even though his eyes creaked open, Derek wasn't looking at you. But finally, he sucked in a breath and took the plunge. Blake, today is Father's Day. Your jaw dropped. Completely forgotten that was today. I got 2 moms. Father's Day ain't nothing. You could put it together immediately, and though you were still stunned, you could put it into words. You thought I was gonna be sad because it's Father's Day and I don't have a dad? Derek lowered his head and pressed his shoulders up to his ears, trying to hide from the sound of it. Well, I wasn't thinking for sure that you'd be sad. I didn't know how you were gonna feel about any of it, and that's what was chewing at me. Derek poured out words one after another, trying to explain himself and the conflicting feelings he had bottled up the entire time. The floodgates had been opened. It's not like I was around last year when this happened. I couldn't help wondering if it was a normal thing or a good time or a low point or whatever. But I don't live in Sunset Bird. I can't walk over there like it's nothing to check. I had to come up with some other dumb way to be around. Derek's speaking pace slowed, but his blinks picked up speed. His rapid flow of words went from explanation to admonishment. It was enough for him to choke on. But that's stupid because if you actually wanted me to be anywhere near you today, you could have asked yourself. And your moms are great, better than most dads, and you've got Elizabeth too. I shouldn't have made a whole big thing out of it because I made stuff up in my head. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And then it went bone dry into silence. Derek dropped his arms to his sides in defeat. He could only look at you out of the corner of his eyes. Not this guy being worried that we didn't have a dad for Father's Day. Oh my goodness. This poor bean, he just made it way worse in his own little head. He is so sweet. Yeah, not upset or uncomfy. He's such a sweet guy. He's such a sweet boy. We love him. Give him a hug. This poor boy needs to know that you're not mad at him right now. It just happened instinctively. You wrapped your arms around his shoulders. Derek's caution turned to confusion. Blake? His breath tickled your neck. After an extra squeeze, you let him go. Y'all, I'll be back in a minute. Okie dokie, we are back, friends. I'm lucky to have someone like you, I think. He's very sweet boy. Very good person to have. Really? You're not gonna tell me to call your moms to come get you and walk out the door and never talk to me again? That's what you thought was gonna happen? Maybe. I figured you'd at least say I'm a pain. Well, I'm not going to do that. Derek crumbled over, gripping his hands against his legs and releasing a massive sigh like he'd finished a marathon. This boy really thought we were going to call him a pain for being worried about us. For being concerned. Fucking stop. I can't. Why is Derek kind of me, though? Wow. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry still. I should have just asked you instead of creepily making you come to my house so I could watch and see if maybe I could figure it out without having a normal conversation. Yeah, that part is a little odd, but like your heart was in the right place though, so it's fine. Yep, that's also a good option. The emotional exhaustion from carrying that stress on his back really had taken its toll. Derek crouched completely and plopped onto the floor. You eased down to sit next to him. He tucked his legs up against his chest and tapped the top of his knees shyly. He was the last kid waiting to be picked for a team on the playground, and you were the captain who could include him. Would you want to talk now? I think that'd be good. A ghost of a smile appeared on Derek's face. It didn't compare to the ear-to-ear grin you were used to, but it was enough to make everything feel a little more normal, a little more right. Honestly, Derek, I forgot it even was Father's Day. We don't celebrate, and it doesn't matter to me at all. You did? Derek smacked his head against his legs, humiliated. But you could hear a few tiny chuckles, and you could see the way the laughter made his shoulders shake. I really dropped the ball, huh? I was driving myself crazy for nothing. That's not true. It's nice that you cared. I know I have someone who really worries about me, and that's pretty special. Derek's face tilted over to the side just enough for you to see the redness tinting his cheeks. Thanks, Blake. Derek waited there on the floor silently, still curled up in a ball. If there was more you needed to tell him, he wasn't going to miss it. What's it like having a dad? Is it different? Is it different to how it's like with your mom? I think that's a good one. Oh. His parents weren't here, but his gaze automatically went to the hall that led to Mr. and Mrs. Suarez's room. You had no idea what was on his mind, so you needed to wait for him to say it. Derek ultimately shrugged one shoulder and tilted his head back to you. It is kind of different. My mom is really a mom, and my dad's a dad. Great details, Derek. You're giving me all the specifics. Yeah, can you elaborate on that one? Sorry. He scratched at his ear. Derek heard the way his own words sounded just as well as you did. I think what I mean is, Mom is nice 'cause she loves me and I love her, and it's great. We can just be together, and it's like I don't have to grow up so fast. It's okay the way it is. That's not exactly how it is with Dad, 'cause I want to be like my dad, and I'm not. I want to get mature and responsible and do more. I don't feel like I'm good enough when I've got to compare myself to him. Derek blinked. He'd caught himself losing track of the topic. It was going where it wasn't supposed to be, and Derek put a stop to it. But it's not bad. It isn't like he's trying to make me feel that way. He pushed a couple inches off the ground using his heels and tipped backward a bit, then fell into place again. Derek looked like a tiny rocking horse. A slight grin cracked open between his lips as he swayed. Yeah, dude, you don't have to be holding yourself up to your dad's standard. That's a little wild. Like you're chill being you. You're chill being you. Doesn't have to be like him. Different person. And I bet a lot of kids don't have that kind of thing about their dad. They want to be like their mom or both their moms. Um, uh, that is interesting, honestly. I don't fully get it, and I don't think he should be holding himself to that, but it's cool you think so. I don't know if it made sense. Want to be like me. Yeah, don't focus on being like your parents. Be like yourself. I think that's perfect. Derek's words then slowed and stumbled. He squinted his eyes as if looking at you was blinding. It was the way he spoke when he forced himself to confess something he wasn't planning on admitting. Also, well, Blake, since we're talking about mom and dad, I want to tell you, they do kind of know why I wanted you to come over. I didn't tell them exactly, but yesterday they somehow figured out I was worrying, and before I could do something to stop it, they put it all together. I don't know how parents do that. They wanted to help me help you if you needed it, but they didn't have any idea that I was just being nosy and you didn't give me any real reason to worry. I understand. It's hard to pretend something is nothing when it's not, and it was really important to you. It was, for sure. Thanks. Um, I'm glad I've got two moms. I love them. Definitely. I get that. They're really good. That was an understatement. Your moms were some of the best people in the world. Mentioning them took you right back to the fun times you'd had with your family. My moms are happy sharing Mother's Day with each other for the parent-based holiday. Though, one time, Mom joked about how they could switch off. One could have actual Mother's Day to herself, and the other could make Father's Day to be the other Mother's Day. Despite Derek's lingering awkwardness, Mom's joke still pulled some snickers from him. She would have been thrilled to know that. That's compromise. Nodded. But that's why we've never done anything for today. Yeah, I hope this didn't ruin your own Father's Day thing. No way. He slapped a palm against the hardwood floor that made the outburst even more startling. Derek stared at you with complete seriousness. All he'd want is getting a card sometime, and my bros might get him little kid kinds of gifts. A flower from the park or a Lego guy or something. You being here, too, is for sure not gonna ruin it. Don't worry about that. Dad only wants to party all day on birthdays, but you could still come to those anyway. That's good. Nothing would have made you feel worse than having Derek throw away his and his family's celebration to try and give you one. But it was easy to believe what he said. He wasn't placating you. Derek wasn't a liar, even if sometimes he didn't tell you every thought and feeling in his head. I think that's enough. You didn't say anything else. Your thoughts drifted away from Derek and even from you. They floated across the condo, out the window, and off into the vast summer sky. As the silence settled between you, Derek plucked at his shoelaces and chewed on the inside of his cheek uncomfortably. When you felt the need to fix everything or make it all better, it was a major hitch when it was not your problem to solve. The air conditioner whirred in the background. Through your fuzzy feeling mind's eye, you could picture your moms and your big sister. Then your brain and your body suddenly snapped together in full focus. Wait, what about Elizabeth? The mention of her name got the same instant reaction from Derek that you'd just experienced. His eyebrows lifted and his mouth opened soundlessly in a small O. She acts like she's over everything, but I think I remember, back when we were little kids, she would get mad on Father's Day. Maybe that's why she was so aggressive yesterday. She didn't have friends who were coming over or anything, and Mom's had work, and now I'm gone too. Derek looked hard at the front door. Was he expecting her to walk through it, or was he planning on running over to Sunset Bird to check? You had no idea. Shoot, I thought there might have been a chance of that. Not you abandoned your sister, you didn't do it on purpose. Tried to consider the possibilities as best you could with what you knew. Yeah, that. Hey, we could call her. I'll do it if you'd feel weird about it. Yeah, let's call Elizabeth and check on her. Cool. Derek unfurled himself, got off the floor, and trotted into the hallway with purpose. Mounted right where the living room narrowed into a hallway, set against the front wall, was an off-white telephone. The phone at your house was wireless. Derek's had an elastic looped line that kept the receiver from going more than a couple feet away from its base. Visions of Nicholas launching a cordless phone into the air purely for his own entertainment made their way across your mind. The option the Suarezes went with was the one most practical for their family. Your sibling, however, would throw a fit if she couldn't chat with her gal pals in private. Elizabeth. You wondered what she was thinking about right now. The old school phone, damn. But you wouldn't have to imagine for longer. Derek didn't waste any time taking the receiver off the hook and offering it to you. There had been many times in the past Derek used this very device to call your house so the two of you could chat about your lives and make plans and whatever else. You'd literally ended up on the other side of things, poised to give the Thrasher line a ring from the Suarez condo. Took it from Derek and punched in the number. Let's go. When you pressed the cool speaker against the side of your face, you heard the high-pitched dial tone playing on repeat. It rang and rang, waiting for one specific person miles away to answer its call. Finally, she did. Hello? Your sister's unmistakable voice filtered through the phone. The impatient note in her voice was just as recognizable. She didn't even know who it was and already sounded uninterested. Oh, Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. It's Blake. Apparently, her apathetic approach was being generous because once she did find out who it was, she cranked the attitude up to outright annoyance. Blake, what do you want? You were facing the wall, but in your peripheral view you could make out Derek glancing with wide eyes. The conversation had actually started. That was all the insight he had on the situation. How are you today, Elizabeth? I'm just great. What do you think? What on earth is wrong with you? Is it seriously that big of a problem for your own sibling to call you? Yeah, that should be obvious. Listen, Blake, unless the police, firefighters, an ambulance, or our moms are involved in whatever it is you're doing, tell me when you get back. You sputtered to get out something, anything that might reach her, but it was in vain. The line clicked dead without a goodbye. You kept staring at the phone pointlessly. You couldn't move to look at Derek, but your hand holding the receiver lifelessly dropped to your side. Blake, what happened? She hung up. Despite the near single-digit amount of seconds your conversation lasted for, Elizabeth's frustrated tone had come through loud and clear. A crease began to form in your forehead. Your sister wasn't happy, and you couldn't shake the horrible feeling that it wasn't just her usual bad attitude. The hall felt cramped, and you were suddenly uncomfortable being surrounded by these walls. Derek watched you helplessly, his fingers tensed, clenching and splaying again. A moment passed, then he let out a heavy breath. He wasn't powerless anymore. I have a plan. You do? You raised your eyebrow. The promise of a possibility gave you enough of a push to move your hand as well and place the receiver back onto the base. Water break! Woo! Yeah, that was like a little unnecessary on Elizabeth's part, but I'm gonna try and give her like a little bit grace if it's a hard day. Derek sprinted through the living area and into his bedroom. The clatter of drawers opening and papers flying came through his open door. You slowly stepped to the edge of the hall to try and glimpse what was happening on the other side of the condo. He soon came bounding out again, clearly successful at something. Derek tossed a stack of colorful folded pamphlets across the surface of the coffee table. You jogged over to meet him there. You couldn't tell what they were for from a distance. Let's bring the party to Elizabeth. These are bus schedules and stuff. I've only got to look at what the times are and we can leave. How did you think of that so fast? I can't think of ideas that quick. The problem-solving skills are fucking phenomenal. Holy shit. He chuckled mischievously. You know what I say, it's good to be prepared. And I did wonder about this kind of thing before. I can't drive, but what if there was an accident or other emergency or whatever and I needed to be someplace right away? I already knew a lot of public transportation stuff because of that. Derek began to shuffle the papers around and he flashed you a bright grin. But I didn't think I'd be pulling this out so that I could go see Elizabeth of all people. Derek laughed lightheartedly over the joke. The words didn't feel very breezy to you. That was because if he was honest, it wasn't about your sister. He'd spent time studying ways to get to Sunset Bird for his friends, for Cove and for you. With you and him living away from each other and not going to the same school, sometimes it seemed like maybe you'd stop being a piece of his life once he left your town. This proved you definitely didn't disappear for Derek. He cared about you even when you weren't there, and you could count on him even more than you had known. That's so fucking sweet. I love Derek. While you were stuck inside your own head, Derek had his nose in the brochures. He pressed his palms on the table, fervently scanning the timetables, and rambled more about his scheme. There isn't a direct line to Sunset Bird. It's kind of a small place. We can take a bus to a real station and get on a smaller shuttle for tourists. Derek's hands lifted from and then hit the smooth surface under him, making a solid smack noise. He was done searching. His gaze flicked up to your face. Is that okay? Thanks, Derek. All right. We can leave a note for Mom about what happened, or... Derek packed up the pamphlets, sticking them in the crook of his arm. He twisted his head behind him, but whispered to you covertly over his shoulder. If it makes you feel better, we might be able to get back before she even knows. What do you want to do, Derek? They are your parents. Sure, but I'm the one who made this a problem. That's not the point. I want to know what you think. I'd tell them. They won't get mad at us for sure. Okay, we'll leave a note. See, was that so hard? Like, you can give your input and it'll be fine. I trust you, Derek. Goddamn. They're your parents. You should make sure they know if you want them to know. Thanks, Blake. One sec. Derek dashed to the back room with all the bus schedules in his arms. He shoved them into something, then ran out to rejoin you at the front of the condo with the bag swung over his shoulder. Next, he went into the kitchen to grab a notepad and pen from the counter. He hopped up on his tiptoes to lean over it and scribbled a few rows of explanation on the paper. He jabbed the button to retract the pen nib with his thumb and set it down alongside the note. Let's do it. Right. You scooped up your own backpack and the two of you locked the now empty apartment behind you. At a brisk pace, Derek led the way out of the condo complex and down the city sidewalks. You had to weave through crowds of people making their own way across town. Most of them were much older and taller than you were. Between the mass of strangers and the immense skyscrapers bearing down on you from all sides, you felt like a very small part of a far bigger world. Take Derek's hand. Be cute. I love it. He wrapped his own fingers around yours and held tight. That gave you the reassurance you hoped it would. You were in this together. You pushed forward until you reached the nearest bus stop. A group had already gathered in the same spot for the same purpose. Derek didn't fight to reach the front of the pack. He just kept to the fringes. You waited for anywhere from 5 minutes to 50 minutes. It was pretty impossible to track time accurately when you felt every single sluggish second hit you like a brick. No matter how long it actually was, it was enough time to think. A part of you had felt as though you couldn't possibly seriously get on a bus and go back to Sunset Bird without any of your parents. That just wouldn't happen. That was probably why you went along with Derek's impulse as quickly as the idea had struck him. But reality hit you like a bus when an actual bus turned a corner and came your way. You gave Derek's hand another squeeze. He responded by tugging you a little bit closer to him. The massive vehicle hit its brakes and slowed to a halt. The doors opened to let out those who'd arrived at their destination and accept new riders. The crowd jostled together and filtered through and from the door. You and Derek went all the way to the tail end of the group. You had enough change in your pocket to pay the fare. Derek flashed a bus pass for his entry. The city bus was as overflowing with people as the streets were. You had to shuffle while turned to your side to get through the aisle without knocking into the arms or legs of the other passengers. There was barely enough space to breathe. Humid summer days had never been more miserable. You couldn't even find seats that were side by side. Instead, you had to settle for two aisle seats that were across the way and one row diagonal from each other. That meant you had to let go of Derek, which was the worst of it all. The automatic door creakily swung closed. You rocked as the wheels began to turn. I think relax the best you could. You'd already committed to going along for the ride. Derek didn't attempt to start a conversation, not that he really could in the hectic space with the distance between you. He'd become completely focused on watching for your stop. He had a destination he needed to get you to, and he was going to do it no matter what. More stops passed by until, eventually, Derek leaned his chest over the open space to send a quick message. His tone was breathy like a whisper, but way too loud to really be whispering. This is it. He shifted upright immediately and tugged the bell, marking this as a stop for the driver. Soon, the bus came to a cautious halt along the edge of the curb. Once at a full stop, the doors popped open, and you repeated the awkward shimmy through the aisle so you could exit. When your feet landed on the cracked ground, you exhaled in satisfaction. You'd made it. This is really good. On Derek's first step into the station, he pulled one of the brochures out of his pocket and flipped it open. He must have kept that single pamphlet with the necessary details when packing the rest of the collection away. Derek was prepared as always. Genuinely, I know it's not a thing in this game, but Derek would 1,000%, like at this age, Derek would be a Boy Scout 1,000%. He'd be the one getting like all the fucking badges and shit, and he'd be like the top fucking Boy Scout. You can't change my mind. That is my headcanon for Derek. He held it up to his face, mapping out the station and using the guide like a treasure hunter. You wandered around the wide-open floor plan, searching up and down for the section where shuttles would load passengers. You were the first to spot the one vehicle headed towards a tiny tourist town. It made you stop in place. Derek. Yeah? At the sound of his name, he lifted his face up above the station map and saw what you saw. Oh. The shuttle was barely 1/4 the size of the bus. It was a glorified van. You only recognized it for what it was, thanks to the unusual pale orange paint job. It also the word shuttle painted in blue across the doors. He tucked the bus schedule pamphlet into his back pocket and gave you a thumbs up. Derek bought tickets at a nearby customer service counter. There was no humoring the possibility of you buying your own ticket or paying for both. That wasn't a hill to die on today. Then you were ready for another ride. You poked your head inside the cabin. Only a handful of other travelers were nestled between the 4 rows of seats. From the seat cushions to the smell, the shuttle was immensely more agreeable than the bus. You were even able to get spots side by side this time. Derek, though, wasn't in any more of a mood to talk. The physical atmosphere might have improved, but the discomfort he felt on the inside was still eating at him. You could only sit in silence. For all the gnawing tension, you did make it. The shuttle inevitably came to its stop in a Sunset Bird parking lot. The car was switched off and the driver gave permission for guests to leave. While the other riders leisurely shuffled around, bags set by their feet, and readjusted their hats, you and Derek hopped right off into freedom. Derek took a couple stumbling steps after his leap from the car, and then he stood in place. He watched for your next move, counting on your guidance to finish the journey. It was time to switch roles. Sunset Bird was your turf, not his. You spun in a single circle, scanning the area for clues as to which of the multiple big, flat, mostly empty parking lots you'd landed in. When you swung back around, you got a glimpse behind the shuttle and spotted the corner of the grocery store. You couldn't have been closer to home. My neighborhood isn't that far from here. This way. You stuck your arm out with a finger pointed directly towards the main street that you were positive was through the distant row of bushes. Awesome. Nice work, Blake. He made a break for it and launched across the blacktop. You ran with him. There was no time to lose. Derek was so fixated he might accidentally leave you in the dust if you didn't push yourself. You flew out of the parking lot and dashed down the sidewalk you'd seen a million times before. From there, it was a turn into the residential area. Before you knew it, you'd arrived at the top of the hill on your street. You were so close. The decline of the road propelled your steps even faster. Derek almost crashed into you when you both dove towards the entryway of your house. You caught yourself by bracing your hands against the front door. It took a second for you to separate your things, your stinging palms from the wood so you could get your key out. But you got it in the lock, turned the key, and pulled. Finally, huffing and puffing, you stumbled inside. You were home. I also love their fucking house. Like look at their house. I love the kitchen. I love the little living room. I love this little fucking green thing that you can sit on. I love the little plant over there. These pillows. It's all just really fucking cute. I love it. 10 out of 10. After everything, you almost didn't know what to expect when you laid your eyes on the scene. But it was your living room, exactly as it was every day of your life. Not a thing was out of place. The low hum of the fridge was the only sound. Elizabeth clearly hadn't torn the house apart in an emotional rampage, although you didn't know what her own room looked like. Blake? You snapped your head to the sound, and there she was, standing on the first step of the stairs. Elizabeth. Her mouth remained open despite not saying anything else. An eyebrow was arched high on her forehead. Hi. Hi. Wait, is that why you were calling? To tell me you were coming back way early? Well, you know what? Explain everything directly. Ain't got no time for foolishness. There was no point in beating around the bush, not after how much you went through to do what you did. Me and Derek wanted to see if you were okay because you were alone here on Father's Day. She let out a single derisive bark of laughter, and more was threatening to spill out. It wasn't the worst reaction you could have gotten, all things considered. How did that even come up? The tip of Derek's foot scuffed at the wooden floor Ma kept sparkling clean. He meekly confessed his part in the debacle. I wanted Blake to spend the night at my place so I could make sure they weren't sad or something. That's what I was hoping for anyway, but it wasn't a great plan. He couldn't help sneaking a shy glance at you. The mocking humor that colored her face was wiped away. In an absolutely deadpan way, she said 2 words. That's adorable. That was enough to end the conversation. Derek had no comeback, and your sister simply stared blankly. I mean, it really is. He was so worried about us. Come on, how are you really doing, Elizabeth? A seriously uncomfortable 3-way staring contest commenced. You kept your focus locked on your sister. She did the same to you. Derek flip-flopped between Elizabeth and you. Then Elizabeth caved. She pinched the bridge of her nose and groaned dramatically. Fine, you kids win. Today was annoying. Not because I care that I only get to have two moms and can't celebrate Daddy Day. It's because every year everybody else is busy and I'm stuck doing nothing. And so, no, I wasn't in a sunshine and rainbows kind of mood. It didn't help that you ended up getting off that boat either. And then you called me. She whipped an accusatory finger right at your chest. You'd gone off to have a party with your friend out of nowhere and decided while doing that to give me a ring while I was stuck in the house like a loser? Rude. That's why I hung up. Okay, that's fairly, why does that actually kind of make sense, though? I hate that that kind of makes sense. Her smirk returned, much more earnest than before. I didn't think you were gonna race across the city to come keep me company. The kind of affectionate teasing from your only older sister warmed your heart. It was special, and all the discomfort was worth it. You could already tell today would be something to laugh about for years to come. Derek remained serious. He blinked in rapid succession and mustered up the will to continue his regretful appeal. Elizabeth, I'm really sorry for not thinking about this more. Elizabeth cut that right off. She swished her hand in front of her face, trying to physically bat away Derek's sentiment. Don't be, please. Save your energy. She settled the tips of fingers against the center of her forehead, her other hand resting on her hip that she jutted out to the side. It's not your job to babysit me. You're not my big brother, and I'm not the one you like. Elizabeth was as sassy as ever, and Derek's overly self-reflective maturity seemed childish when cast in that light. A dark red blush grew across Derek's cheeks, but he smiled. It was a good reminder that he demanded a lot more from himself than others did. As if for the first time, your sister praised you and Derek, huddled together, sweaty and frumpy from the journey. Oh dear, where are my manners? I've got guests and haven't even offered them a drink. She shrugged one arm while sashaying over to the kitchen and opening the fridge. Not very politely, Elizabeth shouted while sticking her head into the chilled shelves. What do you want? Just water, please. Thanks. I'm gonna go... Give me apple juice. A water and apple juice. She set a bottle of water and a container of apple juice promptly on the counter. When her hands were free, she reached back into the fridge to snag the carton of tropical juice as well as 2 glasses. Elizabeth poured a glass of juice for herself and filled a glass of apple juice for you too. One more time, Elizabeth, the demure hostess she was, shouted at you from the kitchen. Come and get it. She punctuated the statement by bumping the fridge door shut with her hip. Then she walked back to the living room, taking a sip of her juice. Derek took it upon himself to pick up both of your drinks. He went straight to the kitchen, grabbed the drinks, then returned to offer you yours. You accepted it from him. Thanks. It made your sister snicker over the rim of her glass. Her gaze stayed on you while she lowered herself slowly to sit on the floor. You shared a quick look with Derek, but ultimately joined your sister on the ground. The 3 of you arranged yourselves in a small circle shape, each with your little drink in hand. It almost felt like being a kid in kindergarten again. Elizabeth lifted her cup over the center of the group. To this auspicious occasion, cheers to us. As sarcastic as her tone was, the fun she was having was genuine. Happy other Mother's Day? Cheers! He thrusted his own drink out in celebration before bringing it back towards his chest. He twisted off the cap of the water bottle and gulped down about half of it in one go. Derek idly wiped his mouth when Elizabeth asked a flat question. How did you actually get here? Is Mrs. Suarez idling in her minivan out there? Derek's reply was perfectly cheery. After the long way there, his spark was finally coming back. No, we took a bus. A bus? And a shuttle. None of the buses go right into Sunset Bird, but we made it. Well, obviously you can see that. Okay, another question. Are you gonna be completely grounded for this? We left a note for my mom. She'll understand. This was an emergency. Or it could have been one. Huh. We were on a mission. Elizabeth rested her eyes shut and took another long sip of juice. I won't tell our moms. Thanks. That's cool of you. Would you want to hang out for a little while? How? We can't go anywhere. Derek jumped right on board with that idea. He had an idea for almost any problem. We'll play a board game. It'd be fun, and we've got a little time. I'll do it. Me too. All right. The three of you agreed on a classic game and did one round. Soon, stacks of fake money, tiny figures, and tokens were scattered around the living room, while each of you fought for financial supremacy. Elizabeth shifted to lay on her stomach, and Derek sat up, vigilant for anyone who tried to cheat the system. You really felt like a kid again. The game eventually got so out of hand, it was mutually decided to be a three-way tie. It was a nice time. When it was really over, Elizabeth spoke up. All right, you've got to go. She stretched her legs and arms, spreading out wide. Being bored all day is gonna be the least of our worries if moms come in and you've magically appeared in the living room. Yeah, it's time to leave. Thanks. Her eyes narrowed, looking between you and Derek. Enjoy what's left of your little sleepover. Derek's mouth dropped open fruitlessly, and then he closed it again. He didn't know what to say to that. Finally, he waved and chirped out a generic farewell. Bye, Elizabeth. Bye. Give her a hug. Elizabeth rolled her eyes in staged annoyance. She couldn't take the smile off her face, and she ultimately returned the gesture, wrapping her arms around your neck. Bye. With your mission accomplished, the two of you returned to the wide-open world. Returning to the parking lot was a far more leisurely trip than your arrival had been. There was time before it'd take off again. You drifted ahead like the lazy white clouds above you. The fluffiness of them made you think of marshmallows. The pale orange 12-seater came into sight, parked at the far edge of the lot. You and Derek got your tickets to ride and hopped on. A few scattered tourists in their sun hats and floral patterned shorts were seated throughout the cabin. The small number of people in the space still felt cramped because of the limited room in the car. You could smell their sunscreen in the air. In a slow, curving motion, the shuttle pulled out. Derek sat rigidly, silently tapping his pointer fingers against the top of his knees for the entire trip. No words were exchanged by anyone, except a few rules and updates mumbled out by the driver. People were tired from their own long adventures out in the world. You could only imagine what the strangers sharing the shuttle had been through while barely audible acoustic guitar tracks played on the radio. Eventually, the shuttle arrived. Each person went their separate ways, except for you and Derek, who stayed by one another's side as a pair. He navigated the station with the maps he had kept tucked in his back pocket as a guide. And finally, you sat down in the deep blue, well-worn fabric of a city bus seat for the last ride. When the bus pulled out this time, Derek wiped his brow with his wristband. You'd made it back to Derrick City. No mortifying calls would have to be made to get an overpriced bus stop payphone from an overpriced bus stop payphone to beg one of your parents to come get you. Derek slipped lower in his seat and stretched his legs out in the aisle. The bus wasn't even half full, so making a little extra room for himself wasn't getting in anyone's way this time. On the outside, the sun was still dipping under the horizon, giving the air relief from its sweltering heat. It all came together to make the metal tube of public transportation less suffocating, totally incomparable to the experience you had at the height of the afternoon. Now it was safe to relax. Good job, us. He chirped with a mixture of relief and fulfillment, like you'd just had an 8-hour shift at a serious adult company. It was an honest day's work. Thank you for helping me. Derek made a big show of swatting his hand nonchalantly, which pretty much completely precluded it from being a casual gesture. The grin on his face couldn't even pretend to be unaffected. He was thrilled. No worries, Blake. Siblings look out for siblings. And he looked at you directly. Friends look out for friends. I know that I can count on you to help me out with the bros when I need it. We're a good team. Oh yeah, we're still Team Thrasher. Rest your head against him. Gently, you shifted over to let the side of your face nestle against your seat neighbor. Derek's eyes fluttered close with a sweet sigh. You were snuggled in for the final leg of the journey, and all you had to do was wait. There was a soft vibration in the back of the bus. It slowly went up your spine and all the way down to the tips of your toes. During the ride before, the sensation had frayed at your nerves. Now it was soothing. With every stop that passed, your eyelids grew heavier. If yours wasn't just the fourth one down the line, you might have fallen asleep. You and Derek were the only ones who got off at that point. The two of you hopped from the front door of the bus onto the sidewalk. Derek leisurely retraced the familiar path you had gone on with him, matching step for step. It was peaceful, and with how close you had been to dozing off, it almost felt like walking through a dream. Finally, you arrived at the Suarez condo after a long, eventful afternoon away. You may not have lived there, but seeing that door made you feel welcomed and safe. Derek clicked his key into the slot and pulled the handle forward. All traces of sleepiness that had lingered in your eyes were instantly wiped away. Derek unavoidably tripped the wire on a mini explosion. Derek's back! The condo wasn't nearly as empty as it was when you'd left. The whole rest of the family had arrived before you. They were gathered together on the couch and bar stools, except for Nicholas, who had jumped to his feet to launch himself at his brother. His short arms circled around Derek's legs. It was an interaction that had happened dozens, maybe even hundreds of times before. That was a hallmark of their own unique sibling relationship. Derek fulfilled his part of the tradition and stroked Nicholas's hair. At the same time, he offered the rest of his family a laid-back greeting. Hey. Good evening to you both. Hi. Welcome back. There was a knowing lilt to her tone and a crook in her smile. Did you have a good trip? Clutched securely between her fingers was a piece of paper. You didn't have to think too hard to guess what it was. The note you'd left explaining what happened. Yes, what a day. It's best you were able to spend time with your family. His parents were both perfectly contented. You had their full support for going on an adventure. Derek wasn't wrong. His parents weren't mad at you. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. It was good. Derek gratefully replied to his parents, all the while sneaking a warm gaze at you. Agreed. Wonderful. Nicholas simply held tight to Derek's jeans the entire time, happy he was there and totally unaware of what the older people were talking about. Jorge stood in between his parents, with his arms pressed to his sides. He had been listening with bemusement, his thin eyebrows pinched and his lips pursed. Now what? Mrs. Suarez snickered cheekily, resting her actual cheek against Mr. Suarez. Well, I'm sorry to say, you better turn right around and go back the way you came. It's time to bring Blake home, but don't worry, I'll drive. Oh yeah. With a wink and a grin, Derek scratched the back of his head. You chuckled right along with his mom. You had a great time staying with the Suarez family, but we're very much looking forward to seeing your moms and being reunited with your own sibling after a humorously short time apart. There would be plenty more moments of fun and laughter to come when you were. Thanks to Derek, it was truly an occasion worth commemorating. Okay, there we go. We've done siblings. I am going to save real fast. Let's see where that's going to put us. That means that tomorrow we will do Boardwalk. Let's see, tomorrow's Tuesday. That means Wednesday we will do, and then summer ended, so the moment, the in-between transitional period between step 2 and step 3, meaning Thursday, we will be back in full swing Cove mode, buddies. And step 3 has to be, I think, my favorite of the steps. Don't get me wrong. I think Soiree is a lot of fun. I do like the boardwalk moment. I think growing and family are good ones. I really like dinner and road trip. I do enjoy it. I think if I had to pick, you know what? I'll go through and give some thought, and when we're done with the game, I will tell y'all my favorite moments from each step, and I will once again reiterate who my favorite of the 3 boys is. Step 3 might also be my favorite because of my favorite character being so present then, but on that note, I am going to wrap it up early here for today, just because y'all know I don't like being in the middle of a moment, blah blah blah. Blake says the same shit 300 times. It's fine. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with me. I appreciate you. I do feel bad that this one's going to be mislabeled, but it's okay because it'll be properly labeled when it's up over on the tube. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night. And as always, take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourselves. It's hard being a person. You're doing the best you can. I am proud of you. And don't forget to live a life that pisses off a bigot. Bye, y'all.